You're listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online, and my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. The interview subject that I have coming up for your listening pleasure, it's Head Ned from the Simpsons Ned Flanders themed outfit, Okilly Dokilly. Now, the reason for the conversation is to promote their February 2020 Australian tour. I'll read out some dates. On the 11th, they're playing in Brisbane, the 12th in Canberra, the 13th in Newcastle, the 14th in Sydney, and February the 15th, that'd be Melbourne's gig. So here he is, Head Ned from the outfit, Okilly Dokilly.
Hello.
Oh, hello, mate. Andrew Mackay-Smith calling for our chat. How you going?
Hey, good. How are you doing, Andrew?
I'm very good, mate. What's been happening apart from the old Aussie phonogrind, as I call them, talking to the old Australian media contingent ahead of the tour?
Not much. I've just been just fighting jet lag a little bit. We just flew home from the UK yesterday.
Oh, yes.
So I've been, getting up kind of early, going to bed kind of early, trying to figure out where my brain's at after flying all around and whatnot. But otherwise, yeah, I'm doing good. It's nice to get back home and get a little rest and get ready for some. We're heading off to Europe in about 2 weeks, so I'm going to be back.
Cool.
Back touring and bringing re-education to the masses.
Mm. Yeah. Jet lag is like being drunk without any of the benefits, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, cool, mate. So look, you are coming down here rather soon, but I'll ask a few questions, about the band first of all, because I host a podcast series, and I think a lot of people are going to be very curious about what you guys do who might not be aware that you guys exist, actually. So, you as a band, you've been on The Simpsons itself, so you've got mainstream acceptance. And I don't think you guys are a gimmick at all, because I'm a musician, and I know for a fact you guys are serious musicians who can write and also play your instruments. So given that you are serious musicians and you know what you're doing, what's the point to the band apart from injecting a bit of humour into heavy metal, or is that the point indeed?
That was kind of the main point. I mean, it all started. When we first started the band, we had been playing in bands, like different ones. I played in a band that everyone said sounded like Weezer, and
Cool.
Our drummer had come from bands and stuff. And so this was Okilly Dokilly was a chance to do something different and do something that was just purely fun. It was something that it wasn't we really didn't want to be terribly serious about it. We were just like, hey, this would be fun to do this, play one or two gigs at a bar or a pub or something, and just have a little fun with it. But then we put our pictures and our demos on the internet, and the internet kind of took off with it, and it kind of evolved into a career and grew a whole lot bigger than we ever thought it would from there.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, the way the internet and the role that it plays in our lives these days means that you guys you start out doing one thing, a photo goes on the internet, and you end up doing something else completely different, and really have got a career from that. Do you sometimes sort of
Yeah.
do you sometimes sort of stop and pinch yourself and think, is this fate or destiny, or is this just sheer luck?
Yeah, it was wild. When we first kind of put some stuff online, my phone was just going bonkers with emails and messages and this and that, and yeah, no one could really believe it. I remember being at work the day that all happened, and I heard a cubicle over, I heard our song start playing just slightly, and it got halfway into the chorus, and I had never told anybody at work that I was in the band or doing that.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And the song got halfway through the chorus, and it stopped, and the person said, not for me. And shut it off and left. And I had a good laugh at that. That was funny to hear. But yeah, the fact that it reached so many people, and even 2 cubicles over without them knowing, was very wild.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's a small world, isn't it? But it's a really small world when something like that happens.
Yeah, definitely.
No. Hey, what about lyrical themes? I haven't investigated this, so I thought I'd ask you the question now. What are you focusing on when you write lyrics?
So all of our lyrics are the majority of them are direct Ned quotes. So in order to stay in line with the heavy metal, really what I do is I just look for anything that Ned says that is either fits one of two categories. Category one is something that Ned says that taken out of context could sound really heavy. Mm-hmm. So our song like Press Destruct Button came from, our song They Warned Me, songs like Mer Diddly Erdler. And category two is kind of something, well, I guess Mer Diddly Erdler fits more in category two, which is something that's too goofy to be a metal lyric, which Ned has like a lot of those, like our song Slander Doodles and I Can't, It's a Geo, and things like that, where,
yep.
you know, the humor comes from like, why is that a metal lyric? And so, yeah, that's where I focus on for lyrics. And the only other things that fall outside of those categories is some early songs like Donut Hell, which is a couple written lyrics that go with what Ned says, and our song All That Is Left, which is kind of our ode to the leftorium and is composed of entirely left-handed puns.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Okay, I'm going to check out the lyrics online actually after this. I'll go and do a bit of reading of them. So the other thing, mate, musically, what I'm hearing is that you guys sound a little bit like Obituary. So do you get that comment a little bit? And who are you inspired by specifically on a musical front?
For that, sorry. We haven't gotten that comparison before, but we've gotten a lot of comparisons to Horse the band. Somebody's mentioned that a lot, which I wasn't familiar with, but I was familiar with Band of Horses. Mm-hmm. And that was really confusing because Band of Horses is very like reverby, ethereal indie pop. So I was like, I don't know where that's coming from. But as far as influences, I think one of the first bands that kind of got me personally into doing the growls and screaming and whatnot was Thrice. I listened to their later catalog and kind of worked backwards. And yeah, when it comes to like the heavier, like hardcore bands, there's not a lot of hugely popular ones that have been that into, but I guess like August Burns Red has been a big influence. There's a band from the UK called Black Peaks that I've been really heavy into. I listened to, growing up, I listened to a lot of Tool. My dad was a big fan of Tool, so I think that's where the metal inception kind of started. And then with the goofier aspects of it, me and our original drummer used to sit down and watch a lot of Metalocalypse.
Oh yes, yep.
So like that was a big part of it, and our favorite thing to clean the house to was a Japanese band called Maximum the Hormone, which was just high energy completely, and within the same song they would go from just the grindiest, punchiest death metal to the cheeriest, bubbliest K-pop, and just the bounce back and forth between those things was just really entertaining. And so I tried to. That's an influence for us with songs like Re-Education and a couple like other ones. I like having those soft parts that it bounce or jump right into heavy parts.
Yeah, you're right. I heard that when I was listening to Okilly Dokilly last night, actually, and it might have been Murder House. When that shift came in, I think it was Murder House, where the shift comes in, and it's a really pleasant shift. And that's really when, as a musician, I stopped and thought, "Oh shit, you guys actually do know how to write songs here. You've got a life far beyond any perception of a gimmick." So it's really cool to hear that, but it's really interesting to hear those influences, because one of the first things that I heard was as I mentioned, Obituary, because of that stompy, doomy, deathy sort of metal sort of influence that you've got there. But to hear that Japanese influence, I'm going to go and check them out now, because of course I haven't heard of half the bands you just mentioned then and there, and that really surprises me, because I like to think that I'm right up on things.
Yeah, one of the weird things too is because this band, when we started, like metal was like it was something that like I enjoyed, but it wasn't something I was terribly familiar with, and I didn't have a huge catalog of metal to really pull from for influences. So a lot of what what we wrote and what we did as metal was coming from a very like unfamiliar stance from it. It was, it was like, I don't know, it was like being described, like somebody described the flavor of a dish and then we had to cook it. So we were kind of performing metal as, as we perceived it to be without a lot of familiarity. And so that's what it turned out. And it's interesting to hear comparisons and things to, other bands that may have come from different paths to get to the same destination.
Yeah, and with this Australian tour, do you have a lot of fans in Australia to the best of your knowledge? So have you received a lot of communication from Australian fans via social media?
Yeah, we actually, one of the things that we look at is stats on Spotify. And when it comes to like Spotify stats, I mean, the United States is definitely the biggest, but Australia lands in the top 4 of countries that we've got listeners. The other 2 are the UK and Germany. And yeah, I really had no idea how much influence even The Simpsons had over in Australia. And so I've been chatting with fans and press about that. The bands that we're touring with, Dr. Colossus, actually became aware of pretty early on. I was really excited to get them on, but I've been talking with their lead singer, about stuff and talking about specifically the Simpsons episode where they do go to Australia, the Bart versus Australia episode.
Yeah.
And seeing how that's perceived in Australia and if referencing that would be, well received or poorly received, and the consensus is that I should reference that as much as possible. So I've been working on building a giant boot that I can walk out onto the stage wearing. But overall, yeah, we surprisingly have. My perception of how many fans we should have has far been exceeded. But yeah, we have a lot more fans in Australia than I ever considered we should have, and it's been really cool to hear from all of them. We have been contacted by quite a few, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I actually remember when that Simpsons episode came out, Bart versus Australia, and I remember watching it in '94 because I think we're about 6 months behind the States back in those days. With we just had pay TV come into the country because the regulation had been lifted or the laws had been changed, and I remembered when that came out. I think. Of course, this is pre-internet era. We were just thrilled, I think, to be recognised by The Simpsons that we even existed. You know what I mean? We were just stoked that we actually made The Simpsons. It felt like, a cultural iconoclast, and to be included in that, a country that was singled out specifically, was really cool. And I think Australians just, they get the references from the Americans' perspective, from people from the United States' perspective. So they're not things that we would mention about ourselves, of course, but we understand that you guys, people in the United States at the time, probably still the same way, see us in that light. So I think it was really cool.
Yeah, it's funny. And yeah, I've been like, one of the things I asked Dr. Colossus, I was like, is everyone going to get mad if we reference the currency as dollary dues?
Dollary dues, yeah.
Yeah, they told us that people would get mad if we didn't do that. So.
Yeah. Well, that thing where Marge asks for coffee and starts spilling out coffee, and then the bar attendant starts spilling out beer back to her, that still happens.
Yeah.
If it's the wrong time of day and someone doesn't want to have a beer and somebody else wants to have a beer and they start spelling out the word beer, and that's where it comes from. So there are things that Simpsons is so interesting, isn't it? I know it's sort of gone off the boil in recent years, but it was it was really a cultural zeitgeist there for a long time. For a bloody long time, and right up until I think when Family Guy really started to become a thing. So, is that something else that you've decided you thought about doing as a bit of a side hustle, as setting up a bit of a Family Guy band as well?
No, we haven't gone the Family Guy route on it, but with this band, we've always been, pondering ideas and whatnot, like what ifs and coming up with other metal bands, show-related metal bands. So far, the front runners have been a King of the Hill themed metal band that's just called Propane and Discomfort. there's a Futurama metal band that we could do, which would just be, bite my shiny death metal. And yeah, we've had a couple other like little shows and things, maybe like an Every Time I Die cover band that everyone dresses like Kenny from South Park. But yeah, we haven't quite come up with anything exactly from Family Guy, but I'll need to work on that.
And what about, I guess it alludes to the fact that, I mean, you're probably already making a living from music now, but does it pay the bills for you? Is it something that you can do full time?
Not entirely. It's something that, like, while we're on tour and while we're keeping busy, it's enough to pay some bills, and it's enough. And I think any musician should have, or I think a lot of musicians can appreciate when they get to the level where touring doesn't cost you anything. Like, a lot of musicians go out on tour, especially, and they'll come back having lost, lots of money, but they get the experiences from it. And we're at a level where we can go out on tour and come back and not have, debt racked up from that. But yeah, I do a lot of, oddly enough, freelance digital marketing work.
Yep.
I'm kind of work with Google a lot and work with businesses on their websites and things. So I get to do the boring work from home desk job stuff when we're not on tour. And I think that it makes it all the more fun when we do go out on tour, because I can kind of drop that for a bit and leave the desk behind and step onto the stage. And it's nice to have those two different lifestyles to kind of bounce between. It really preserves the juxtaposition of this one's fun and this one's calming, but not as fun.
Yeah, cool, mate. Yeah, get it. Yeah, but what about fans? Do you get some strange fans and some pretty interesting requests?
We get. Our fans tend to be pretty great. We have each show tends to be a tiny Simpsons convention. Especially our latest tour, we just happened to get booked in London on Halloween, and about a quarter of the fans there were all dressed like Ned Flanders. And yeah, people were wearing full on Simpsons costumes and things like that. But I can't say that we've had any entirely strange requests, other than, people wanting us to do after shows, like do a quick shout out on their phone to a friend of theirs that's, jealous that they made it to the show and their friend couldn't. And, a couple, signatures on some strange things and whatnot. But, overall, when it comes to like us and the fans, I guess we tend to be the strangest thing in the room.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. No, fair enough, mate. Look, you're a good band, though, as I say, mate. And I think anybody listening to this thinking that you guys can't do what you need to do on stage from a musical perspective, that's wrong. You definitely can. So congratulations on that front, mate. And it's in February that you're coming down here, mate. So you actually got a fairly comprehensive tour, given that you're playing in Canberra and Newcastle as well, which aren't major, or Canberra's our capital city of Australia, but it's not the most populous city in the country, if you know what I'm saying. But Newcastle the same way too. So, mate, good luck with everything. Good luck on the tour and with everything else. I think metal needs a bit more. Metal, hard rock, and punk, hardcore needs a little bit more of a sense of humour injected into it. And I think you guys are carrying that flag very high, mate. So good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, we're excited to head down there and meet some Australian neighborinos. So thank you.
No worries. All right, mate. Thanks very much for the conversation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, take care, Andrew.
No worries, brother. Catch ya. You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online, and my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. That interview subject was Head Ned from the outfit Okilly Dokilly. Thanks so much for listening.